Hello and welcome to this video where I want to show you how you can help OpenStreetMap Ireland in putting Ireland's buildings on the map. What you see there is the task manager that Johnny McCullough recently updated, and we've been using it for a long time now. The buildings project started in 2019 in Kilkenny actually, and that's really when I got involved in OpenStreetMap Ireland for real. And the aim is to put all Ireland's buildings on the map. And we're roughly halfway there. And we need all the help we can get because there are a lot of buildings to map. And of course, you're never finished because there's always new buildings being built and old buildings being demolished. And we want to keep the map updated. So it takes a lot of effort. And as I said, we need all the help we can get. And part of that process is validation, because it's quality control basically. So someone goes in, uses the task manager and maps the buildings, and then we have to have a second person coming in to check if they did it right. And we're kind of lagging behind in that. And here you can see the start page of the task manager. And you can see why we're doing this and who else is using the task manager and who else is using the maps and so on. And there's one mapper online now, that would be me, and 445 mappers have worked on this map. So it has a lot of statistics as well if you're into that. And if I go into Explore projects here at the top, this will show you projects that you can work on. There are only two where more mapping is needed at the moment, and that's County Down and Fingal. And all the other ones, we need validation, or they need validation. And they're very different counties, so we have Connemara, and that would probably go very quickly because there weren't that many buildings. And County Meath, Drogheda will probably also go pretty quickly because the tiles are smaller, but it's very urban. So I can only validate in County Down and in County Fingal because you can only validate tiles that you haven't mapped yourself. And I've validated all the other tiles that were mapped by other people in all the other projects already. So Fingal is what I'm working on at the moment, mapping wise. And I'll use that for validation as well because the project was started in 2019 and some of the tiles were mapped 3 to 4 years ago. And they need validation because there's been a lot of building going on in Fingal. So that's why we need to do that. And I will do 15 minutes. I'll set an alarm for 15 minutes and I'll do 15 minutes and you can watch me do that. And I'll talk while I'm doing that if there is anything to talk about. Otherwise it'll be more ASMR, which can be nice too. And I am using, for all the mapping I'm doing in the buildings project, I'm using the OSM editor because it's just so much faster. If you're using the right plugins, I'm not going to talk about all the plugins I'm using because there are videos about that out there already, not necessarily by OpenStreetMap Ireland members. But the task manager is also used for humanitarian mapping whenever there is an earthquake or a flood, which there seem to be all the time now. So if you want to prioritize that and if you'd rather help someone in an area where humanitarian mapping is needed, please do. But if you're not that concerned about that, or if you have more patriotism for Ireland or whatever, you can help us out in Ireland. So JOSM you can download at josm.openstreetmap.org, I think. Yes. Oh, it's .de, sorry. josm.openstreetmap.de. I will put a link in the video description so you can download it from there and then install it and open it. And there are also videos about how to set that up because of course you have to connect it to your user account and all that. This is what it looks like when you have data loaded. I'm just going to delete that so you know what it looks like when you just open JOSM. So this is what it looks like. You get a bit of a welcome message and there are useful links and so on. What is very important for, not very important, but very useful for validation is the color scheme that Johnny also developed. And you can get that on GitHub. I'll also put a link to that in the description. And what he did is he color coded the buildings by their building type. So if you've mapped before, and hopefully you have, because otherwise you can't really validate, so you have to have a little bit of experience. We have different building types, so building equals house, or building equals farm auxiliary, or shed, or whatever, and they all come in different colors if you use that color style or map style that Johnny developed. Also, the highways have a name or a label displayed. That is not displayed on the map once it's uploaded, it's just to help you out differentiating. So the driveway has a different color scheme than an unclassified road, and it also says driveway on it, and so on. The buildings also say building equals yes, so that's this kind of reddish brown. Detached and house are yellow, but house has this dashed line and detached has a solid line, and so on. We'll see more of that once we get started. So it explains it here how to use it. You go into OSM, edit preferences here, and then just follow his instructions. I've already loaded that because I've been using it basically since he introduced it, and it's very, very useful. So that's what you need to know about that. Now I'm going into the Fingal project. I have to use a VPN for some reason. If I don't use a VPN, it won't open the project sometimes. I have no idea why that is. We have no idea. I've talked to Johnny about this. We haven't found out why that is, but at least I found a solution that lets me go into the projects. But of course that slows the whole process down because I have a free version VPN, and that makes the internet a bit slower. So once it has opened the project, you get a bit more information, a short introduction here. The area of Fingal will be one of the tasks of hashtag OSM Ireland's effort to map all the buildings in the country. And there's a read more, and then down here it says what type of mapping is required, so highways, buildings, and land use, but the focus is really on the buildings and the major highways. You don't have to map every driveway, but maybe I'll get to a tile where I explain which ones are more important than others. And then there's a longer description here. It does say mapping of buildings with the basic tagging building equals yes, but we are trying to be more precise than that. But back when we started in 2019, all that was required was building equals yes, and we haven't changed the description. I've also set it that it automatically loads Bing imagery because it's not the most recent, but it's the best imagery we can get. And sometimes it's worth checking against Esri World, but we'll see that when we get there. And then you click on Contribute at the bottom right. Contribute. And then it loads the grid here. So it's what we call tiles. So it's automatically divided the task into tiles, and you just work tile by tile until the whole project is finished. And there's also color coding here. So white means it's available for mapping. Light blue means it's ready for validation, so it's mapped. And yellow, which we don't have here at the moment, more mapping needed. So that's what happens when you validate and you see a lot of mistakes that you're not willing to fix yourself. But it would be better if you just did that, because there's no guarantee that someone will come along very soon and actually fix it, and we don't want too many mistakes on the map. So then you mark it as more mapping needed, and that'll turn the tile kind of this bright yellow shade. Green means finished, which means it is mapped and validated. Gray is where means unavailable. That means when you're going in to map it and the imagery is bad, if there's cloud coverage or something, then you can mark it as unavailable or bad imagery. And then pink are priority areas, which you rarely get, but we do have it in Fingal. So I've been working on this now because it is a priority area mapping there. And on the left hand side we have the task, so you see the recent history of what has been mapped or validated, and you see that's me there. And then you have instructions. Map all the buildings of every size. Do terrace divisions if it is possible to see mapillary images that are abundant in this area. I don't do that because the Bing imagery is good enough to see the divisions. If you have time to do land uses, do land uses and add in missing details on roads, which the Big C created this one, and he probably means names, which you can sometimes get off Mapillary. And then you get the contributions, so that's more statistics for you. So you see the username in the first column, and then how many tasks they have mapped, how many they have validated, and then a total number. We go back to tasks, and then if you wanted to validate just a certain user's tiles, let's say I wanted to validate only the Big C's, I could type his name in here and it would show me all the tiles that he has worked on, and I could go through the ones that are ready for validation. What you can also do here, you can filter just ready for validation, and then I can't validate the ones I've mapped, so I would have to go through possibly to the last page and start there. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to randomly do that rather than validating tiles by a certain user. So I'll have to jump around in this page. So I'll open the last one. 3 years ago, so when you click on it, it highlights it on the little map here. So that's a corner bit. I'm expecting that to be quite rural. And then at the bottom right, you click on validate selected task, and that will open it automatically in JOSM. You have to have JOSM open already though. Here in the kind of the middle, you can choose a different editor if you're not comfortable with JOSM, but I would recommend learning how to use JOSM because, as I said, it's just so much faster and so much more efficient. So I'm going to click on that now and then go into JOSM, and it loads the data. And you see how this is all hashed here around. So you're not supposed to work on that area, but only on this. And then there's also a county boundary here. I presume it's a county. If we go back here, you see that it's not actually a square tile because there's a boundary here that cuts it off. So you're only supposed to do that part only here. And it looks like everything is done at first glance. So you zoom in. If you zoom out too much, you won't see the color of the buildings as well. But if you zoom in here, let's start with the house, just to make sure that it is square, because somehow it doesn't look exactly square. I'll hit the Q key on my keyboard, where it was because it was mapped by someone who knows what they were doing. Just going to check the offset here. So you see how the N2 isn't exactly on the middle line of this, and also the outline of the house doesn't quite match up with the footprint of the house. So if we want to correct that, go to the top right here into the layers, right click on Bing Aerial Imagery and on New Offset, and then holding your left mouse button, you can move the background map a little bit to make the highway line match up with the middle line of the road, and check if that helps with the building a bit. It does slightly. And then hit OK, and that'll just save that offset. It's not always easy because sometimes the highway isn't exactly mapped on the middle line, but I don't want to go into too much about that. So I'm going to move this a little bit now because it doesn't seem to match up exactly with the footprint of the house. It's only about, I'd say maybe 30 centimeters or something, but still. So click on the house and just move it holding your left mouse button. And the same with some of the others. And here you can see there's a lot of garages, which I doubt are all garages. Some of them are probably sheds. And here the footprint doesn't quite match the size of the building. So I'll just make that a little bit smaller here, and there's no building here. I don't see anything. I'll go and see if there is other imagery that he probably used. I presume they used Esri imagery back when they did this. There seems to be a building there, which is gone in Bing, and you can switch in between the imageries using the, I don't know what that key is called, the one below the escape key. And it seems that it's only a ruin now. And I haven't stopped the timer yet because I'm still explaining. These two buildings are also snapped together, which sometimes makes sense, but I'd rather not have them snapped together. And you can unglue. Here is the point. If I move this, it would move this edge of this building as well, which we don't want. So if I want to unglue that, either I can just highlight this edge and press the G key on my keyboard for unglue, and then move it. Or I can highlight the whole building and press G, and that would unglue all the corners, but it is only glued to this corner. And then I can move that. These are actually two buildings here. So I'm going to separate that and square it off. Am I still on Bing? Now I'm back to Bing, and I'll change these to shed. And this one to, I presume it's a ruin. I can't really see that much. And this one, move that a little bit as well. And it's probably a shed or a farm building rather than a garage. And this one, definitely a farm building. So I'll rename that or retag that. And then there's another ruin here, which is now under a stream. But the stream is the townland boundary or whatever boundary this is. County boundary. So I can move that over there. So that's this group of buildings done. There aren't really that many more. There's some down here, but they're not quite sure they're actually part of the task. So I'll save that now, and then I'll start the timer for the next tile. So up here you go to upload, and ideally add more than just the hashtag thing, which I'm usually too lazy to do, to be honest. So my keyboard sometimes switches to German. I'll just type in buildings because I'm lazy like that. And upload. And then you can go back into the task manager. Is this task well mapped? I think it is now. And then so you choose yes, and then submit task. If you thought it wasn't well mapped and you were not in the mood for improving it yourself, but as I said, please just do it because otherwise it'll never get done. You could do no and add a comment, like say if there were buildings missing, you could say buildings missing in the southeast, or please terrace houses or something like that. Maybe we'll come to one of those at some point, but not in this rural area. And then submit task, and that turns the task green, so to speak. There. And then we can look for the next one. I don't want to do another one by Yonako. I'll go with one by the Big C. Start my timer. And click on a random task here. I don't know where it is. Down here, near Lucan. And click validate task, and it opens it in JOSM. So there's a bit more going on here. There's a golf course. Here sometimes I do map a few of the golf features, but it's not time for this now. Then we have a tennis pitch here that is not quite in the right rotation. So I've made it a little bit smaller because it was too big, and to rotate, so I don't really have to think about it anymore. You press Control Shift when it's highlighted, and then you can rotate it. And then you can also move it a little bit and make sure it is mapped as a tennis pitch. So leisure equals pitch, sport equals tennis. I have a preset up here for that, which automatically also adds access private, which I'm just going to click. And the house is fine and the garage is fine. And then we have a couple of buildings down here, houses. I could go in and add all these tiny extensions. I don't always do it because it's more important to have the basic shape done, just to show you that is possible. And all this extrusion is just so much easier in JOSM than it would be in the ID editor. Everything is automatically square. Sometimes when you validate, you come across buildings. I'm just gonna continue while I'm talking. So when you come across buildings, buildings tend to be square in some, or have square angles. They might have extensions, but they usually have right angles. And sometimes people don't seem to understand that when they map buildings, and they map shadows as part of the buildings and stuff like that. So that is sometimes the case, and you will have to adjust that. So they can be mapped as house or as detached. That's your own preference. And these could also be mapped as two houses or as semi-detached. It's more of a personal preference. When you see something like this, where there is a semi-detached or two semi-detached houses, and one is mapped as a house and one is semi-detached, I think it makes more sense to have them both mapped the same way. So I turn that into the semi-detached. And you see a lot of the sheds are mapped here. We have come to the decision not to map all the sheds because you never finish anything if you do. But here's a house missing. It could be because it wasn't there. Well, it was there, but it was just overlooked. So one of the plugins allows you to, I think it's just called a buildings plugin. You'll find them under preferences, and it just allows you to draw squares and to extrude, and it's just very, very handy when you're doing buildings. So that's that done. These ones here have addresses and everything, that's great. This one now doesn't, but I can't tell from here what the address is. And then we have a shed here. It's half in the task and half not in the task, so I'm just gonna map it. The rule is that it's not semi-detached shed, probably. The rule is if there's more than 50% in your tile, you map it. If there's more than 50% outside the tile, you don't map it, because it's very unlikely, but someone could be mapping the adjacent tile and then you get an editing conflict. But because so few people are mapping in Ireland using the task manager, it isn't really a problem anymore. It was more of a problem when we started off, when people were more motivated. Someone mapped this as a building, but it's clearly not. It's a tennis pitch. It might happen when you're using the buildings plugin to map anything that is square, because it just lets you do square stuff, and then you might forget to retag it as whatever it actually is. So I'll delete the building tags and add my tennis preset to it. Presets are really handy if it's for something that has more than one tag. So you just hit a button and it adds all the tags in one go. I wouldn't think this is a private house. There are just too many cars in front. And it looks like there's actually a car park here. Very few people have an actual car park outside their house. It's probably a clubhouse or something. Maybe it's a tennis club or something. Well, I don't know. So I'm just gonna not add a building type there because I don't know what it is. I could add this as parking lot. So again, because it's somewhat square, I'm using the building plugin for that. But of course I have to delete the building tag and add amenity parking instead. And that turns it yellow, but that's just a regular JOSM preset. That's not part of the color scheme that Johnny developed. And there isn't much more to do here. So we upload that, buildings again, and upload the changes. And then we mark it as validated. I paused the clock because I'm losing a lot of time waiting for the page to load because of the VPN, and maybe the internet is a bit slow today because it's after Storm Debbie or whatever the name was. So I paused that because I lost like 30 seconds on this. So I'm gonna start this again and go to the next tile. I'm gonna choose this small one here. Hopefully I haven't mapped it. No, it was also the big C. And validate. And there's not a single building inside. The car park looks okay enough to me. And I don't have to upload anything because there's nothing to upload. And I can just mark it as well mapped. So that only took about 10 seconds to open the tile, see that everything was all right, and mark it as validated. Sometimes it's as quick as that. Sometimes it's not, of course. So I'll look for the next one before I start the clock again. So there are more pitches down here. It's not really part of the buildings task, but and maybe it wasn't mapped during that. So there's a house here that looks larger than life. So I'm going to adjust that. The garage isn't mapped, so I'm going to add that. There's another house here. To be honest, I don't always do these conservatories or whatever they are. Or sometimes I only extrude them like that and I don't do the half circle because it's just faster not to do it. But when I validate, I feel like I should add that extra detail. Like in these cases, usually I wouldn't add the driveway because it's very short, but sometimes, I'm just doing it now so I have something to do while I talk. But sometimes the house is set back far from the road or it's at a crossing, and then if you're a delivery van like Amazon Prime and you're using OpenStreetMap as you do, you want to know the exact route to get there. You want to know where the driveway is. It's important in that case, so that's why sometimes when there's a longer driveway I do add it. But you see the different color codes that Johnny developed here. So shed is kind of grey, dashed, garage is kind of, I don't know, ochre, whatever that color is, with a solid line. And house is yellow with a dashed line, and so on. Oops. So this one, if you see this, that means that the building wasn't squared. So you just square it and then continue on. And then these kind of overlaps won't happen again. I wouldn't think this is a greenhouse, because a greenhouse is more see-through. I'm gonna map this as a shed. this, but yeah, this is actually larger than it was mapped. If you're not sure if something is a shed or a garage, just leave it as building yes, or make a judgment call. Up to you, really. In my opinion, of course. Sometimes what I also do, because this is the canal, the Royal Canal, I also add the area of the canal or the river. It's not part of the building task, but sometimes I just feel like doing it. And sometimes I also just do it when there's nothing else to do in the tile, just to have done something. And I have a preset for river area, but this is obviously not a river but a canal, so I have to change that. I should probably finish this now. Oops. And you can also merge this. I could define it as a river area and retag as canal, but I can also merge it with the one that I've already done. And because this bit here has no tags on it, it'll automatically take the tags from this one. And the shortcut is Shift J for join. So see, now it's a large area and it has the 2 tags for canal and water area. And then I can upload that. Buildings canal area and upload. And mark it as done. I'll do one by a different mapper now, just to see, you know, different styles. This is hopefully rural enough because I only have 2 minutes left on the clock. So you can already see from this that there are some buildings missing. I could mark this as unfinished now, and he would probably go in and finish it, but I don't want to delay it any further. So there's something here, a building. So like this one here is quite a bit away from the road, so I will add a service highway here, just to make it easier for delivery or visitors to find it. Highway equals service. Don't see that shed here, so I'll delete it. And then we have some farm buildings here. Seems to be a second way up to there, but I'm sure the Glanbia truck or Tirlan knows how to get there by now. Some more buildings here. Oh, what the buildings plugin also does, when you have a building highlighted, it'll automatically make it parallel to that, which I don't want in this case, but sometimes it is useful. I think these are ruins. They don't have a special color theme. And then we have another house here. With possibly a garage, because maybe you can see the opening there, looks like a car would fit through. I don't know why he overlooked that. time's up, but I'm just gonna finish this tile. This one here could be a garage, could be a shed, so I'm just gonna leave it like it is. And there are some here. Actually looks like I need to adjust the offset. That is annoying. Still off center. So this looks more like a greenhouse or a polytunnel. You can see the ribs there, whatever they're called. So it's also not, there's no footpath there, which kind of is a hint at it being a greenhouse. There's no shed here. And there's no shed that covers all of this. Should be a bit more precise. Please, no more buildings. No. See, this is, you know, it's very rare that buildings actually have an angle like that. I didn't highlight all of them properly. I'm not even sure if that's a shed, could just be a trailer. Now I have to move all these now because I adjusted the offset. It's best to check the offset at a junction, but you don't always get a junction, so it's not my favorite topic to talk about. And then when I'm finished, I usually zoom out and check if I've overlooked anything. What I usually do when I'm mapping is also use the British War Office map to see if there's any. Get house names sometimes, like here at Reynoldstown House, which I can add an address house name, Reynoldstown House. And sometimes you get ring forts and all kinds of things, names of rivers and so on. And then save. And it derives the sources automatically because I've ticked this here. And then I can mark this as done. I think so that was 4 or 5 tiles, I'm not quite sure, within, well, 17 minutes probably. And as I said, it depends on how thorough you want to be. I mean, try to be thorough, obviously, because chances are there's not going to be a mapper coming along the area in quite a while. So do your best while you're mapping. But you can cover quite a bit, depending a bit on the task, on how densely it is built. Obviously, if you have a proper urban area, it might take a lot longer. It's just too much to look at. I'm trying to find one here that I didn't map. But despite this being the priority area, I think it was just ignored previously. So I can't show you, well, maybe this one that looks built up. Oh, I also mapped that. This one has a few more buildings in it. I'm just going to open that to show you. For example, here we would have a terrace that isn't split, but where it's also a little bit difficult to see where it does split. You can see hedges here and footpath going up to the door. So there's probably a split here and here and here. But I won't do that now. But this is a bit more built up, and then you can have a look if... I'm just gonna map these as houses, because if you're using Street Complete, if you decided to go to wherever this is and do a bit of Street Complete, if it's mapped as a house or detached or semi-detached, it will ask you to add the house number. If it's just mapped as a building, I think it doesn't necessarily. So just to enable that option in Street Complete, I'm gonna add a couple house tags here and not do anything else. One option that I forgot to mention is that you can also, if you're not finished validating and you don't want to say it's badly mapped, you can also just stop validation if, I don't know, if you have to go somewhere suddenly or whatever. So that's the third option, just to get you out of that task. So that's how we validate buildings, and it'd be great if we had more help to move this along, because validation is needed, not just in your personal life, but also as quality control here, especially when these maps have been mapped 3 or 4 years ago and a lot of building has been going on since, and demolition as well, maybe not as much. So thank you for watching and happy mapping, and see you maybe again in another video. Slán!